So there's lots of different things that are important. I think for leaders, the one thing that we talk about a lot is leadership alignment. So making sure that as a group, you are aligned as a leadership team. If you're not, that makes it really difficult to move forward. And that's the same with any team, really. But at the top, you've got to have that alignment to move things forward and to lead everybody in that same direction. Because if you're not doing that, it's going to make any kind of recovery really hard work. I think the other thing is communication in general, which sounds very broad, but if you're not sure on who your stakeholders are and how to communicate with them, both in terms of the messaging about what's important to them, so it's relevant, and the right channels with which to reach them, then that is going to be really difficult. So we spend a lot of time helping people think about that alignment piece, and also what's the best way to reach people. And if you've got people that are all over the place, what are the right channels for that? How do you need to change your communication for a digital space, and all of those sort of little nuances that we don't really think about and that we take for granted. It's that you can't assume anything. And I think that's probably the thing that is also really key, is don't assume that people understand or that they know. You've got to take the time to be really clear, really consistent, and just keep that going. So for me, it's everything, because I think when you're in any state of instability or ambiguity or whatever might be going on, you've got to have communication, because ultimately, if you're in any sort of chaos or if it's gone into a crisis, there are elements of relationships that need to be repaired, and that needs communication in order to do that. And that's the bit that I think is really important. I think if you don't invest in the communication to help rebuild the relationships, rebuild trust, and rebuild the things that are needed, then it's never going to work. You can't repair things without communicating, because it would never work. Even if you think about relationships outside of work or anything like that, it's not going to heal unless there are conversations. And those conversations have to be transparent to the degree that they are able to be transparent. But they also have to be credible, they have to be trusted, they have to be genuine, they have to be all those things that are going to make somebody believe you, essentially, and follow you. And that's ultimately what you're looking for when you're trying to rebuild things.
So you mentioned in terms of chaos becoming crisis. Is that always the case? I mean, are there things you can do with an organization that's facing chaos to stop it moving in towards any kind of crisis?
Yeah, 100%. So when we talk about chaos, I'm talking about things that will happen in an organization that will lead to symptoms because of that chaos. So chaos, when we're talking about it, can be things like, people off on stress. You could have been through a merger or an acquisition. You could have been through rapid growth. There could be significant organizational transformation. All of those things lead to chaos and disorder, and things not working how you want them to work. So often when we come in because things just aren't happening how they should be happening. Nothing bad has happened. We haven't gone into sort of crisis territory, but things aren't happening how they want them to. And that can become a crisis, because if you've got loads of people off on stress, for example, or off sick with stress because it's become quite a toxic environment, or people are burning out because of workload, then that can escalate into a crisis around reputation, around things in the press. It can very quickly flip. So we want to make sure for the people involved that doesn't happen, because we have a duty of care to people, but also for the organization, you don't want it to get there. So they're not always the same thing, but what is quite nice about the chaos is that you're often catching it before it becomes a crisis. We don't often come in when a crisis is underway. We leave that to experts like you who can come and help people. And I think they are different things. They're definitely different things for me in terms of how you solve them and the time you have to fix them.
Yeah, I mean, I often talk about the fact that the world feels like it's in a bit of a chaotic phase at the minute. Are you seeing that, particularly kind of post-COVID, that there is an increase in elements of chaos within organizations and kind of businesses?
Yeah, 100%. And I think the hybrid piece, because we like to brand things, is really having an issue. I think it's having an issue on organizations that weren't in that space at all, were all in an office. I think even people that weren't in an office before, where the world's just turned upside down for 2 years, I think, people's priorities are different, how they want to work is different. It's changed a lot of things, and that makes it very chaotic, because how do you get your hands around it? all of that can be solved by changing your focus. And that's what we always say to people when we work with them. You just need to pay more attention and be more intentional about how you're communicating in this way, or you need to spend more time over here, not over here. So it's not always about investing loads of money in doing something. It's just refocusing your attention and going somewhere else. But it seems to be the hybrid work seems to be the biggest thing at the moment that people are still trying to make sense of. And also the use of digital tools and how digital tools can really make a difference to work. People have sort of thrown things in and are now feeling that, oh God, we threw this in and now we've got 17 different versions of one thing and it's not working. So it's unpicking some of those things. And that's quite fun because it's like a puzzle and you're just sort of moving things around to make it a bit calmer.
Yeah, I know it's caused the hybrid working's caused a massive issue in terms of emergency response and crisis response, because you've been so used to either you're all remote or you're all in an office, and you can plan that way. When it's a mix, it becomes even more kind of challenging to work out what to do.
Yeah, and I think that my biggest issue with the hybrid stuff is that people forget all of the deskless workers that are out there. So when people are talking about, we can work from an office, we can work at home, I'm like, there's about 80% of the workforce who don't have that luxury, yet we seem so focused on the people in an office. And that's why we're doing the research again into deskless workers and how to communicate with them, because having done it in 2019, I do think there is a difference from COVID and technology that should have changed that. I'm not sure, but we've got lots of different organisations involved, from the fire service to ambulance services to sort of construction. There's all sorts in there, which is really good. So it'd be good to see if it's changed. But I think the hybrid stuff is so focused on one specific area, and like you said, it makes it so much harder. I know people that work in certain industries and they went sort of fully remote, and they did a bit of analysis, and it was like it takes us 40% more time to actually get anything done because we can't collaborate in the way that we used to. And I think there's so many negatives. There are positives, but you have to really think about what's best for your culture and what you want. I love this question. I love that before we started, I was like, it depends. It depends what the chaos is. So my top tips from going from chaos to calm are the first is to get to the root cause, which is what we do a lot of. So you've got to get to the root cause of that chaos. Don't address the symptoms. If you've got people off on stress or off sick, find out why. Find out if it's because of a line manager. Find that root cause. Don't deal with the symptoms. So that's number one. The second is we have to invest in line manager communication skills. All of the research I've done and read points to the fact that is a big one in terms of people's experience at work, their happiness at work, all those things. So line manager communication skills. And then the third is the alignment piece. So it's making sure that your leadership team are aligned, that your team, whatever function you work in, there is alignment there. You can't change unless you are all going in the same direction. So alignment has to be there in order for you to all move at the same time in the same way. So they are my three.